Wassink. I have been in IEC for 30 years. Oh, that kind of hurts to say, actually. It's actually just under 30 years. I am based in Wilton, Connecticut. And I think of Connecticut as the land of like an IEC on every single corner. Some of you may get that, some of you may not. We're each going to introduce ourselves, and so we'll talk about that as we go. So this session is about growing your practice and scaling your practice, and we'll each share our growth and our scale stories. But first I'm going to ask you the question. Actually, first I'm going to show you a comic about scale and growth, which I thought was really funny because they are put together by the New Yorker. And I think that the cow is in particular funny because he's like, I'm not buying it. And then first I want to ask you guys a question. So how would you define a thriving consulting practice? And I really just want you to throw out words and yell. Yep.
Leads coming in on a regular basis.
Okay.
Turning clients away.
Turning clients away. Okay.
Solid pipeline.
What is it?
Solid pipeline which is moving year to year.
Okay. Solid pipeline. Anything else? Happy students. Happy students. And happy, also happy parents? Yeah, okay. So what's the best way to achieve a thriving consulting practice? That's IECA comes to IECA, right? But it's a harder question to really answer, and there are a zillion answers to that question, right? Standardizing, or being super creative, or so all of those kinds of things.
One that gives you a good life-work balance.
What is that, right?
One that lets me support my family like I hoped I could.
Yeah, okay.
Where work feels like play.
Yeah, okay. And all of those are right. So I'll give you a little bit about my background. I don't want to go too much into my therapy situation, but I went to the wrong college. And I think every year I'm trying to work it out. Like with every year of students, I'm at year 27, well, so maybe I'll get it this year. But I went to Brown undergrad. It was not the right school for me, too loosey-goosey. Who knew I loved structure? I came out of Brown with a question mark and bounced around. It didn't help the stock market crash, so now that's dating me. Some of you will know how old I am. And I found myself at Northwestern in admissions. It was fabulous. I worked at Kellogg, and really? Get out. Okay. Okay. Michelle Rogers still there? No. Okay. Well, we'll talk about it. Anyway, so I went to Wharton, got my MBA there after I left Kellogg, and I mean, fabulous. The most structure, exactly the right school for me. I worked for 5 years on Wall Street, selling and trading high yield bonds. And then when I was 5 months pregnant and my company was taken over, I was laid off. And I just, both having a fetus and being fetal at the same time, my husband noted to me that he had a friend who was looking for help reading an application. And that began my career as a college consultant. So my first 5 years, I'm gonna make sure, my first 5 years, I did everything. But the thing that I did that nobody would do today, I think, is I had no personal email. And remember that email, people are like, remember that email was relatively new, right? So everybody who ever knew me was getting an email over what would be the next 20 years with my college consulting email. Even my book club still uses my work email, so it's really kind of funny. I would not recommend that now. I didn't say no to anyone suggesting almost anything. I talked to everyone. I left my card, sometimes I even still leave my card at the car wash, the library, the post office, and all of those places. I worked for like pennies and was really happy to do so. I advertised everywhere, and if you all, know this industry as well as I'm sure you do, lost all that money because nobody ever buys advertising. And then eventually I came to acknowledge my specialty. And my specialty is schools that have less than a 30% admit rate. So I love the high stress parent, you have to get into MIT, come to me, I love that stress. Now, I am able to say, after 5 years, word of mouth, I've got, 2,000 seniors, I got 1 million juniors, I got 12 sophomores, so I am able to say that, but I also don't think it's the right thing to say. So eventually, and hopefully in the Q&A, I'll bring up why I don't think it's the right thing to say.
What's not the right thing?
This is something that we say a lot, right?
Yeah.
When you say, well, how's your practice going? Someone will say, I've got, 9,000 seniors, I got 2 million juniors, and is it the right thing to say, right? So that's where I dust off my MBA and I ask myself, is that really the thing that I want to be saying about my practice, or are there other things that I should be saying? And I'll talk about that in a second.
You said this is a no good? Do
Well, we'll talk about it.
no
We'll talk
leave
about it.
a card everywhere and advertise everywhere? Because it doesn't work?
I think it works to do those things, but I don't know that it works to have this statement. And we'll talk about that in a second. I have scaled in every single way I think possible. And a lot of the ways that I've scaled required similar attributes or similar things happening in my businesses. So I've had 4 IECs working for me. I don't know that I wanted to be a manager or knew at that point what it took to manage 4 people just immediately. There was more paperwork, more pay scales. You have to really want to be able to talk to people and not your students. I was able to garner a certain rate, and when I went to managing other people, my revenue fell off because they weren't able to garner the same rate. And if there's a problem with a parent or a student, you're often either stepping in to fix that problem, or you are taking over that student, which means, and working with an irate parent and getting them to I'm thinking of like a cat that you're really trying to make angry anymore is not really a phenomenal thing. So anyway, I did that. I also worked with an administrative staff backing me up. I thought that was a really good model. That worked through COVID. And basically what I did for that was I had a book, which I call my operations manual. Every single thing I did in my business, I wrote a checklist for. And I gave them the checklists to follow my business, so that if they wanted to onboard a client, they could. And if they wanted to do personal property, or if I wanted them to do personal property tax, they could. If they were ordering office supplies, all of that came through the admin staff. After COVID, and when one of them decided she wanted to be full-time, that kind of broke off a little bit. And now I'm more of a solopreneur. And basically, what I do now is I work with as many students as I want, as many students as I choose. And what I do is I have people who work behind me. I'm the only face of the business. I meet with every single client, but I have someone who works with me on ethics. I have someone who works with me on the Common App. I have someone who sets up the school list. I tell them the schools and they put it all in. So I'm the face of the business, and I have a lot of people who aren't here with me, but who are standing behind me making my practice better. I work until all of my students are at 7. Now this is the tricky part, but I work until all of my students are at about 70% of done with their first choice school. And then once they're at 70% of done, I ask 3 former admissions officers via AdmissionsCheckup to critique their applications and tell us what's missing. What have we done wrong? Where are the problems? And that's actually been, for me, a differentiator in my business. People come to me for that service. Between the 70 and 100%, what happens is that the student has uploaded their application to AdmissionsCheckup.com. We get the critique. I look at the critique versus their actual application, whatever they submitted, and I give them suggestions. And based on those suggestions, what I then do is have a meeting with the parent and the student, and we talk about the critique, and then and we reconcile what could be better, what could change, what shouldn't change, and then I send the student home, and in roughly an hour or two, the student can bring the application from 70% to 100%. Because he or she has, or they, have an outline with which to work. And then I can take on another 5, 7 students in mid-September, which gives me another class and allows me to scale. And that class is, and I hate to use this word because now you'll know that I went to Wharton, but it's price inelastic. They're like, I will give you anything to work with my son and to get him through. He hasn't done anything all summer. And so that's now how I scale my practice. So we're gonna take questions at the end, but I'm gonna now turn it over to Hannah Statland, who's gonna talk a little bit about her practice.